Hello, welcome to this chat on Bailey Digital Media. I'm Chris Hopkins. Glad to be here with my partner, Buster Chestnut. And today's guest is, man, this dude, he's multifaceted. He's one of the most intelligent and the most intimidating people I've ever met. I'm going to go ahead and pronounce it Georgios, but you can call me George Pardos. Welcome to the show, George.
Hey, Chris, thank you for having me on. I know I rib you a lot because you're like the fourth funniest comedian in Ohio. So, you know.
Looks ain't everything, though. This head.
Hey, you know what? I tell the same thing to Vince. I go to Vince Morris. I said, Dino Tripodis is the funniest in Ohio. I just got to stick with him. I mean, I know.
Hey, I ain't mad at it.
Well, Dino's my cousin, so I gotta stick with him. Then
I'm mad at. Hey, fourth gets you into the college football playoff, so we cool. Long as we in the BCS, I'm okay.
That is facts. That is facts. But yeah.
So let's get started. This is about you. Yeah. Actually, this motherfucker is one of my favorite. George, I've been waiting to do this. So we're gonna start from the beginning. Where's your hometown and your high school? Tell me where the George Pardos story started.
So I grew up. We moved to Columbus when I was in sixth grade. I wound up going to North Middle School, and then I went to Westland High School on the west side.
Nice.
So
I didn't know you went to Westland.
Yeah.
You went to Wasteland.
Yeah. So do you know why they call it Wasteland? Have you ever heard the story about this?
No, we didn't have much money or imagination at Franklin Heights. So
okay. So let me tell you the story about this. In 1980, they have an ROTC big show at Westland. Okay.
Yeah.
So spring of 80. They got this big show, and like two of the news stations there. That day, somebody had brought in some Quaaludes that were tainted. And they had 15
oh my God.
Now, I don't know if you're old enough to remember what a Quaalude was, but it would let you touch God. And and basically they had 15 overdoses in the same day. And in any other time that wouldn't have made the news, but they already had the news crew out there for this ROTC event. and so now they got squads coming out there, and they got, the squad fire. They got, and one girl that they had in there, she was the closest to being to dying. And they had her out on a stretcher.
She was really touching God, huh?
Yeah,
a little too close.
She was touching God and then some. And then so that made the news all over Columbus. And then they just started calling it Wasteland. And then my dad says to me, because this is right before I started my freshman year there, right? And he goes, I don't know that if I trust you to send you to Westland, I'm going to send you to the Catholic to send you to Catholic school. And I'm looking at my dad. I'm like, who do you think's got better drugs? The poor kids at Westland or the rich kids at Catholic school? I mean,
I'm not gonna say nothing. All we gonna say is we know people who went to Reedy. That's all I'm gonna say.
We know. I know. I mean, Bishop Reedy had money. I mean, we were poor West Side folk, and it was like, and so I started to fall, and it was something else because my dad was like, my dad raised me, so I'm sitting here with my dad, and he's arguing about it. I'm like, Dad, first of all, I'm not doing drugs. Number two, we owned the Aegean at the time. What the heck?
Yeah.
I mean, we had a nightclub. If I want to go out, I'm going to go to the nightclub.
You're not going to go to a high school. You're going to go to the club.
Yeah.
I mean, why am I going to stay? And I had one of my friends was like, why am I going to try to sneak beer or alcohol from my dad's liquor cabinet where I can go drink with my aunts and uncles at the Aegean and it's free?
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, it sounds like a much better deal to me for sure.
And so all my and that was the funny thing about my friends growing up. we had at the Aegean, we had belly dancers. And during the same time, our family was partners in the Brown Derby on Morse Road. So
Okay.
if I wanted to go out, we could. Now, honestly, when you're a freshman, there ain't a whole lot you can do if you don't drive yet. But I remember I took all my, I took my friends there. They would go hang out. They see the belly dancers. And a lot of these guys were, lying about everything they did in high school. You know how that was. And so it was a different time back then because, and the other thing you got to remember, when I was in high school, the drinking age was 18 and you could buy that 3.2 beer. So, they had that. So if you walked into a grocery store, like you went to Kroger's or IGA, they had the beer was in two coolers. They had the 6% beer on one side, and then they had the 3%, 3.2%. So they had Schlitz, they had Olympia, Hudipole, Old Mill, Old Milwaukee. They had the 3.2 version. So you could buy that beer and, at 18. So my senior year, I started to shave when I was 6. So when
it makes me laugh because I barely need to shave now, and I'm
in
my 40s.
My sophomore year. So I'll tell you this. I'm
not gonna start shaving till 50.
Yeah. My sophomore year, I was 220 pounds. So I go, people thought I was an adult. And so, we didn't get carded back then. And there was a place in Galloway, Ohio. It was called the Galloway Quick Stop. I think it was Quick Stopper. And so, if you went to that Galloway thing, they didn't even card you back then. Not to mention the Hague Avenue Quick Stop, the Hague Avenue Market. So it wasn't. I mean, it was a different time growing up. They didn't. You could drink in your car. They didn't have the open container rule yet. So west side of Columbus was no joke. It wasn't for amateurs.
I mean, it sounds like a good time though. So I had a similar situation back out in the country. I dated this girl who, she was 21 at the time. I was 17. Anyway, and she worked at the local gas station, and all of her coworkers just assumed I was 21. So I was getting beer for everybody on a regular, allegedly.
Yeah, we didn't have. I got to tell you this. What was interesting is when I was in high school, and especially, growing up in Ohio, you probably are used to this too. We had bonfire parties.
Yep.
And
that was my favorite.
We would just have a bonfire. We'd go over to somebody's house, and they would set fire to we had always had trash, and then you would just sit around and, the big thing back then in high school that was big was they had Coney wine, Little Kings, and Southern Comfort. That was like the top. That was like the holy grail of alcohol.
The Trinity.
So, the Trinity. Where did you go to high school?
I went to a little school called East Knox.
Okay.
You're just in the middle of nowhere, but we were well versed in the bonfire party. I actually was reminiscing about that earlier today. Somebody shared a meme. It was like, back in my day, we just needed, a pile of wood, six, maybe not a six, but maybe a case of beer and, couple party favors. And we had a good time.
Well, this is the other thing that growing up on the West Side and something, well, it still exists, but if you had a farm in Columbus, and especially on like the Hoffmans had a farm, you could drive on a farm permit at 15.
Oh,
so
okay.
You didn't, you could drive a farm as long as it said the vehicle said farm. You could drive at 15. So I had friends that were driving pickup trucks at 15 years old. So, I mean, that was, again, different lifestyle back then before the, all the helicopter moms started ruining it. So,
hold on. Let me catch you right here and pivot. When did you get started? What sports did you play at Westland, and when did you get started in wrestling?
Okay. So I played football, and I played so I got to take a step back. So I need to explain this to you. So I started playing football at Westland, and I didn't start wrestling until my junior year, but I started with judo.
Even better.
And so if you grew up on the west side of Columbus, you remember Wilson, the Coney Island on
right there, Broad and Wilson.
Yeah. So I started there, and there was our restaurant, our family was involved in it. Our cousins owned that. So, during my beginning of my freshman and sophomore year, I would go in there at 04 and cut meat because we would make sandwiches for the GM plant. I would do that twice a week. So there's a GM plant on, the Delphi, used to be Delphi, but it was on. So twice a week I would get up, I would go cut the sandwich. I would go cut the meat. We'd have ham, turkey, and roast beef, and we'd make sandwiches because the guys who would come in and grab a bag lunch, and I would do that. Well, one of the guys that came in there was a judo instructor from Japan. And so we would go in there, and I was getting picked on. And that was one of and my dad, was like, one of the problems was that, my dad solved things by not, he's a Greek dad. He doesn't just stay. He just gives you a solution to fix it. I mean, he's like, he's not going to pat you on the back or dry your tears. He's like, here, go fix it. This is what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then so he would just say, hey, so he did two things for me. Our next door neighbor was a guy named Bill Davis. Mm-hmm. And Bill Davis was originally Buster Douglas's trainer.
Oh. I thought that sounded familiar.
Yeah, if you were he would take me to go box, and he would go take me to box in the springtime. I mean, in off season, and basically, I grew up sparring Rick Spain, Kemper Morton, Jeff Jordan, all those guys, and we would go down to a place on High Street called Lefties or Packies, or there was another boxing club, the Sunshine, down.
Oh yeah, Sunshine Park. Yeah.
Yeah.
So football and wrestling was simple. By the time you got to the high school, that was simple. A lot of guys, when they play high school football, it's their first real introduction to being physical and not even, more collision. So you already had a combat sports background. So that was like playing with little kids.
Yeah. So the guy that was friends with my judo instructor was JT Will. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then so my freshman year, like I said, I was getting picked on. He introduced me to Masa, and he goes, "Hey, you're in judo." And Masa was here. Masa had originally came to the U.S. to work at the Honda plant in Marysville. He was one of the I don't know,
people to set the plant up.
Yeah, he was a part of that, and he was a project manager. But he was also in the Yakuza, which kind of didn't kind of understand back then. And it was like, so for the first couple years, I sit there and he, he takes me in, and I guess we kind of clicked, and he starts teaching me judo. So now mind you, I need to describe Masa for a second because he's in the book that I wrote. Masa is about 5'10", and he's built kind of like he's kind of built like Lawler in the UFC, just that or more so like a big version of BJ Penn, and so he goes, I'll teach you judo. And so part of the time I go spar with, I go with Bill Davis to, go to the gym, and he teaches me how to box. And the other part of the time I'm there with Masa because he's teaching me judo. And then so at the end of my sophomore year, we were horrible. We were 3-7 in football. I was not going to wrestle. And then Tom Keegan says to me, because he was our defensive coach, why don't you come out for wrestling? And I'm like, okay. And that was the first time that I wrestled a little bit with my freshman year when we had kind of the club team, but my first real year on the mat was my junior year. And so that was when I actually started wrestling and kind of got hooked to it. And during, Masa had stayed in the U.S. until I think the almost the end of '83, which is the end of my junior year. And so I, learned judo, and this guy just threw me around. He just did whatever he wanted. I mean, this guy was I'd go to grab lapel thrown. I'd go grab the other Uchimata. I'd go grab another, Sotogari. I mean, I was getting mollywop, but I was learning, how to do stuff. So at the end of my senior year, at the end of '83, I'm going into my senior year. Masa goes back to Japan, and I still practice some of the judo throws. I still, practice wrestling. And again, you're a young kid. You're learning how to do stuff. Well, at the end of '83, we go to a wrestling tournament, and it's the first time I saw Greg Gibson wrestle. And Greg was he was in the Marine Corps, and Greg was the gods decided to give him genetic freak mode, because he was going to say, we are going to touch you. You're going to have six pack abs until your 40s, and you're never going to look like you age. But I saw him wrestle, and he wrestled for the Marine Corps. And at that point, it was like, so I was like, I think I could do this. So in the day of the Ohio State-Michigan game in 1983, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And
quick question before we go too far. What was the moment? What was it? Was it a move? What was the moment, like a match that you remember in high school that you knew, okay, I can do this? Did you have like because you talked about bringing the moves from judo.
So I had a match in high school, and I beat a kid from Gahanna, and his name was Troy Elzey, and this dude was just jacked. I mean, he was just, and I beat him. I beat him by, I think, 3 or 4 points, and then I realized, I can do this. I think I can do this, and it just kind of changed my, because you always think about the stuff when you win, and you also think about when you lose, right? Well, you learn more in losing than you ever do in winning, And that summer, I had gone to the university in a summer between my junior and senior year. I go to the University of Michigan wrestling camp, and
Keep cursing on my show, man. No, just kidding.
Well, no, and I'll tell you the reason why. Chris Ford, they did not let him hold camp, wrestling camp that summer. They got in a fight, and the only place they had was at Michigan, and my cousin, they lived in Detroit, got me a spot at the University of Michigan wrestling camp, and I go up there. I have a match up there with the guy that won the New York State Championship.
Okay.
And so he is, I have a match with him, and he won the state in New York, and I wrestled him, and we went into a match, and I think he wound up beating me 6-5. And I was like, you know what? I can compete with the best of them. So coming back that fall, I come back to, I decide, I'm not going to be able to wrestle in college as soon as I graduate, because I just didn't have enough mat experience. But what I said was like, hey, the recruiters said to me, join the Marine Corps. You could wrestle for the Marine Corps. And I'm like, they had a really good team back then. It was Greg Gibson. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. I think I could.
Wow.
And then so I saw Greg throw this guy, and I was like, I think I could do that. So, like you said, I enlisted in November, had a good senior year. And then I left for, actually tomorrow is my Yellow Footprint Day, which is the day I reported to boot camp at MCRD Paris Island. So you always remember the day you reported to boot camp. It's like etched in your brain, because you get off the bus at 2:00 in the morning. They yell at you. You get on these yellow footprints, and they yell at you repeatedly. And so that was the day. But growing up on the West Side was, you could not. One of the things I'm going to say, and this is not going to sound right, but you could not be a pussy growing up on the West Side of Columbus. You could not. You had to be a kind of you had to stick up for yourself. Nobody was coming to save you.
Gritty and I don't know. You had a thick skin, right?
Yeah, because you think about it. You had to work, and I worked at Darby Dan Farms during the summer. I used to clean out the stalls. And Darby Dan Farms were owned by the Galbraith family, so we would go to the stalls and clean them out, and they would pay us rather well. It was not a bad job. And then we got in the Marine Corps, and it was the Marine Corps is a little bit different. It's not for everybody.
Yeah. Definitely was not for me. But yeah, a little bit of my background. I didn't like people yelling at me personally. So I decided to, kind of pursue my own things. But my best friend from high school, he joined the Marines. He actually,
I grew up with a Greek dad. He yelled at me in 2 languages. It was
that sounds fun.
I went to boot camp, and it was like, wait a second. They let you sleep 8 hours. They don't yell at you. They feed you. Shit, I'm good.
Now we're seeing the outside. There you go. Might need to flip that camera around.
Chris, what are you doing, bro? It's not for everybody.
I got Michigan Wi-Fi. Hold on, now we getting off. Yeah, we getting off. I don't need my video, because y'all can hear me. Y'all know what the fuck I look like, and I want to get this shit going. You joined the Marine Corps, but another thing you did for your country, didn't you wrestle Karelin?
Yes. That was
what the fuck was that like, wrestling? I won't even, because you talk about being, God gifting. Is like people know about Rulon Gardner beating him, but I think that most people have no idea like what that person was to that sport. Like there's no, I don't think there's an accurate description or comparison.
Yeah. So I wrestled him at Concord, which is a Greco tournament out in California. Now, this is after I got out of the Marine Corps and I was wrestling at Ohio State. So Concord was this tournament that they held out in California. It was right north of San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I go out there, and I was planning on wrestling 220 at the time. And they did not have enough in the field of the heavyweights. So
that's that bullshit.
I'm like, so I was going to go out there and wrestle 220. And in the last moment, they say, well, we need you to wrestle at heavyweight. So the pools are there. We have more 220 pounders than they expected. And he says, would you mind? And I'm like, I don't care, except for the fact that Karelin's there. So I have him the second round. Now, the day that I wrestled him, he weighed in at I was 236, and he was 278, somewhere around there.
Oh, geez.
Slight difference. Yeah, slight difference there.
Slight difference. He disrespected me, basically. I have a 2-on-1, and anybody, I have a Russian 2-on-1 and in Greco, I tried to underhook him, and he just kind of like, he stepped on me, and he was like, no. And there's just not a whole lot I could do against him. And he pinned me a little over 3 minutes. But it was two
the
things.
Thing is, you lasted 3 minutes with a legend in your sport. And then there's a lot of people, if you've never grappled, that's one of the beautiful things about you're not going to ever learn unless you wrestle or grapple with somebody who's way better than you. And you need to have somebody to treat you like a cat with a mouse. You almost, to know where you're really at on the totem pole, you need somebody to all great fighters get their asses beat. You gotta go to a camp that's gonna beat your ass. You got iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, and you got to remember in '88, I went to the Olympic trials at 220. I mean, that was the weight that I'm used to going.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I represented the Marine Corps at the trials. So we wrestled,
you had to go up a weight to heavyweight.
I was not quite ready for that. And here's the thing, I wrestled Rulon too. So when we go in there, I mean, I'd wrestled Rulon. Rulon's a little bit younger than me, but I'd wrestled Rulon at the in '97. I wrestled against him at the U.S. Open. But when we went at when we were at Concord, I went up a weight class and he didn't have it. Now the first match, I did okay because I wrestled a guy from Poland and we went into overtime. But Karelin just, there's just not a whole lot I could do against him, and understandable. The first time he goes to reverse lift me, I did something that he was not expecting. I hit an inside stand up. So he goes to reverse lift me, and as he's lifting me, I step in, because I know it's coming. I hit a stand up, and I go inside and I stand up and I actually get away from him. And he just looked at me like, you have angered me. I must now kill you. And so I get up and, the ref, does the continue movement. Because at the time and so what I did was I hand controlled. I tried, instead of I did what I could. I went into what's called a blade, which is you put your shoulder forward, and I fought with him. But his hands, what is really deceptive about him is you don't realize how fast his hand movement is. It's like, and you don't realize how strong he is because he's got you ever seen a panther flex? Like where he just, and then he just flexes.
Now that's a perfect thing to lead us into the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Now you said that was in the 80s, and the Russian strength training techniques were completely different. We're not going to talk about the supplements, but everything. But the way we were still doing 3 sets of 10 on the bench press. They had kettlebells. They had different things where they would hold stuff almost like yoga. They had different techniques to build. Hold on, to build explosive strength. Now you went from 220 to the size you are now. Moving big men against their will takes strength. Now you were involved with one of the most famous strength and conditioning camps of all time. I'll just let you, go in and fill that in. I just want to lead you that way.
So, Westside Barbell, right here.
Yes, sir. Barbell. Yes, sir.
So, I got to tell you, the first time I met Louie, Louie Simmons, I knew there's a guy by the name of Matt Dimmel, and I knew Matt Dimmel before I knew Louie Simmons. So Matt used to come in to Coney Island, and he would order 2 foot-long Coney dogs with fries in a basket. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I'd have a hard time finishing one of them, let alone 2. This guy would just eat. And Matt was kind of a buddy. He was kind of like a friend. Yeah. Because you go in there. And in 86, I come home on leave. I tell the story. I come home on leave, and we're at a club called Rainbows.
I know Rainbows. That's right there. Dimmel to Sullivan.
And so I need a ride home, and Matt was there with a couple other guys. I go up to Matt, and I'm like, "Hey, man," he's like, "Hey," I said, my buddies left me because he got lucky. I said, "Can you give me a ride home?" And he says, "Oh,
sounds like Rainbows. That is a Rainbows night."
So we go over to TJ's country place, right? And on the way, he says, "You want to go get some food?" Now, this is when he drove that little Chevy S10 pickup, which he took most of the front seat. We go there and stop, and he says, he orders 2 Barnyard Busters and a cheeseburger.
I was going to ask if you got the Barnyard Buster. He said, "No, we got 2."
Well, and the waitress looks and he says, and he looks at me. He says, "Aren't you going to order?" I'm like, "Okay." I thought the one was. So she brings out. he got 2 and I got 1, and he gave me a ride home. So I knew Matt Dimmel. So in 80 at the end of 87, going into 88. I got orders to go to the All Marine team, to try out for the All Marine team. I didn't have a strength coach. The Marine Corps didn't have a strength coach at the time. It wasn't like it is now. So Matt, he says, "Well, why don't you go talk to Louie?" Like, okay. So I go to Louie, and this is when they had the gym over on Demarest in that old.
Oh, I know. That was how I ran into him.
Yeah. That was the original, and he had that gym for a while. And I go into him, and I say, "Hey, Louie, listen, I've got a really good shot at the trials. I said I should be able to place in the top 8. I just need," and then he put me on a program, and that was the one thing too that I got to say this. There are guys that I never. From the time I met Louie until there was not a time I ever stepped on the mat that I got overstrengthed. Now might have been overconditioned, sure. Yeah. But no one said, "Hey, I'm going to have your weight. They're just going to overpower me." So Louie said, "Hey, do this, do this, do this." And what's really funny about it, in 1990. I went and wrestled in the Moscow Cup. So this is when when I was at so I get out of the Marine Corps in 88 and I got a scholarship to Ohio State. So from 88 to 93 I was wrestling at Ohio State, and in 1990 we had the Moscow Cup that we got invited to. So I go over there. And the Moscow Cup was held at the Moscow Sports Institute, which is their equivalent to the Olympic Training Center.
Okay.
And lo and behold, they're doing the same shit that Louie was teaching.
Louie was
Xerxer squats, deep squats, high pulls, Jefferson lifts, and negative deadlifts. And they were doing the exact same stuff because they, kind of showed us
What up, everybody? Let's go! Flipping through the packs, chasing down that 101, yeah. Searching for the grail till the morning sun comes. Buster! Hit that monster pull, an impossible play. Change the whole damn game in a major way. We hit that monster pull, an impossible play. Change the whole damn game in